Hello everyone. This is DM Galabond. Um, we are getting ready to start our first session of the auspiciously entitled History of D&D game today. Um, I have with me at the moment Ikata and LC, and we are going to begin by taking a little look at something um, that I discovered buried in the rules between the time we made up our characters and this time, and that is that back in the early days of D&D, they did do one forward-thinking um, thing during its evolution, and that is they added skills. So in the text channel for core rules and resources, there is a list of skills. And one of the other things that I should probably do is I should probably go ahead and add that um, as a handout in Roll 20, um, first edition skills. And then that way I can show it to the people on the stream or the people that view the stream later. Hello, future people. And where are we here? We're gonna go D&D all. We say history, rules and tables. Okay. First edition skill list. Oh, okay. Save. And then all the players show to everyone. Okay. And then I'm going to add a handout, and it's skills page 2. Continue. Okay. Save changes, and then show to players, show to everyone. Okay. All right. So, um, so what you guys should see on the skill list, boy, that's small, isn't it? Oh, there we go. Okay, you should see the first edition skills, and as with some later editions, all the skills are tied to one of your core abilities. And what I thought, the way I thought I would handle it in the game is I would go ahead and let everybody um, take a look at it this week, and then starting next week, um, pick like basically two of these skills that you can give your character at first level. And then for every other level that you go up, so then at third level, at fifth level, seventh level, so on, you can add another skill. And so you can figure out what might make sense for your character from this list of skills. Um, Strength. It's kind of interesting. In this edition, they have intimidation as a strength skill. So it's more of a physical than a verbal intimidation, I guess, because later editions will put that under charisma. And then intelligence, there's a lot of things that you know. There's a lot of these that say choose type, choose type. So as you're reading over these during the week, if you have any questions, let me know, and I can whip up a description from the rules, a brief description of what each of these do. Some of them are kind of um, self-explanatory. Others are might need a little bit more explanation. Um, so then the second or a second page of that is going to continue on with like the um, wisdom, and then you'll have your dexterity, your constitution, and your charisma skills. So, and then dexterity piloting, that's probably going to be akin to either um, land vessels or sea vessels. Um, so, yeah, they put that under piloting. So it'd be like if you're good with a stagecoach or if you're good with sailing or something of that nature, um, is the way I'm interpreting that particular skill there. All right. So those handouts should be shared in the journal, and I think I have set it up so everybody can see those. If you have any trouble finding those after the session, go ahead and let me know, or if you can't find them at the break, let me know, and I'll make sure that I get them. I may have to wind up sharing them individually with everybody, but I hope that by just telling it that it's visible to everyone, that you can all see it in your journals. And there's kind of a quirk with Roll20, which is that if you put a PDF in as a handout, you have to split that in, make every separate page of the handout its own handout. You can't have a multi-page handout. So that's kind of annoying, but that's the way that works. So that will add another little dimension and element to the game. Any questions about just the idea of adding skills in general to the game? Okay, hearing none, I'll take that as a no. And then we'll go ahead and we will start. And I'm going to start by changing our view and having us take a look at the place where our adventures will begin. Our adventures are going to begin in a little hamlet that is called Dedale. And this little hamlet um, is located in a region that is um, outside of Hofsland. And actually, since many of you would be a little bit familiar with this area, it's probably a good idea to give you um, a sense of where we are. Ooh, well, okay, that's a little bit small. All right, so we'll zoom in here a little bit. You can zoom in. Each of you, I think, can zoom in to your to what makes sense. I'll go ahead and zoom in for the stream on the player's view. Okay, Dedale, as you can see, is right up here in this little elbow on the Queen's Road between Hofsland and the capital of Olanatheus. So the Queen's Road is mostly a coastal road, except for where these little features are. And you have this kind of little feature, which is a bunch of little crags and places where the land is all kind of folded up and bunched up. And then just to the east of that, you have this big forest area here. It's kind of a hilly forest area, and the road just kind of runs right along um, the edge of the forest and the edge of this pockmarked, folded up region. And then Dedale is kind of at the north end of that forest, and towards the south end of the forest is a keep that everybody in this area just calls it the keep. There's a duke who lives there, and um, he kind of was given, or his family long ago was given that keep, and they are sort of responsible for keeping the road between um, the road along that forest uh, from being too overrun with bandits or wild creatures or things of that nature. So he kind of has some patrols that go up and down the road. And then there's a little militia from Dedale that patrols around the outskirts of the village itself. And then the road south of the keep goes past this little swampy area here. And then it makes its way all the way down to the capital of Olenathias. And Olenathias kind of sits at along the edge of this lake where this river feeds into it, and then that river flows out into this big deep water harbor here. So um, it's kind of got a little bit of it's a kind of a protected port there for Olenathias. But we will begin right here in Dedale. And going back to our other map, oops, let me move the view for everybody back here. Okay, going back to this other map. Sorry how this thing always decides it's going to default to one zoom level. If you were coming from Hofsland, you would come in along this north road here, and then you would make your way down. There's a church, which is kind of an all-faith temple. There's little shrines to most of the gods at the church here. And then it goes into the main house or main heart of the village where you have the trader. You have the brewer over here. Very important that you always have to have a brewer in your village. Um, and then the trader is right here. You have your teamster over here. Um, cheesemaker over here. You have some farmhouses around here. Some barns. You have the kind of the village elder who's sort of the first among equals on the village council is over here. Um, and then the place where everybody who's in Dedale for any who's passing through, spending the night because it's kind of a way stop, or who's going to visit the village for a reason and stay a while, they usually stay right here at the inn of the Welcome Wench. Um, and then this village hall here is where the village elders would meet. So this is kind of the area um, that you all find yourself, and it's a late afternoon, early evening on kind of a late spring day, um, and so why don't you all tell me what you are doing? How do you arrive in town? Have you already been in town? Um, what are you doing as people start gathering, heading towards the Inn of the Welcome Wench, where y'all probably have rooms, or where you know that you can get a good meal from the folks there. So, uh, Ikata, do you have any thoughts on uh, what you would be doing?
Yeah, so, as I put in the backstory, my character recently came to town after having a disagreement with his brother about how to run the farm.
Mm-hmm.
And his sisters both live in town. So I imagine he's going to hang out with the family.
Okay, so he's at the family. Um, he is with the family, and we know that uh, several um, several of the okay, I'm trying to get into your character's backstory over here. All right, Gluengil. Um, so Gluengil, you're coming to town, and you're gonna hang out with probably one of your sisters. Maybe go over for a mug of ale at the Inn of the Welcome Wench a little bit later. Okay, LC. I believe you are Cyran. Is that correct? Is that
That
how we
is
pronounce
correct.
it? Okay, so Cyran, what about you? What are you doing on this fine spring evening?
Well, knowing Cyran, he's probably, well, right now he's probably asking around trying to find if there's something heroic he can, maybe chatting up the local barkeep, seeing if he can go talk to the whoever's in charge of this town. Just asking whoever you can if there's something heroic and noble you can go do today.
Okay, well, uh, as we move to the interior of the Inn of the Welcome Wench, we do in fact find that um, there are some folks over here. Um, let us see. Okay, I'm going to move this in slightly on this view for the stream. All right, the main doorway uh, coming in to the inn is going to be over here. And so I guess we can go to the. Let's go find Cyran. Cyran, did you ever find a token? I guess you didn't.
No, I don't think I did.
Okay, so let's take a few moments and we will look for at least a suitable temporary token. As you are if you find a piece or if you create a specific token that you would like to use, you certainly are welcome to do that. Okay, let me do this. I'm gonna go to Cyran and I am going to edit. I will go back here and I will drop token there. And I will just go ahead token here. This is not a great token, but I'll just go ahead and use that one.
All right.
Okay.
Works for now.
Okay, so for now, um, now can you double check if you are able to move that token around?
I cannot
Make sure.
right now.
Okay, then I need to make sure that that's assigned to you. Hmm. I'm gonna try putting it in again. Putting it in again and save. Okay. Now see if you can grab it and move it around.
It seems like I still can't interact with it.
Okay. Try refreshing, just reloading Roll20.
Sure.
See if that.
Still nothing on my end.
Okay, because in the journal, I have it assigned. Oh, you know what? You know what? I screwed this up. Oh, okay. You pulled one out of the journal, and now can you move that one around?
Yes, I can move this one around.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm just going to get rid of these extra ones. I realized what I had done is I had saved the um, character in the journal to you, but I had not assigned the token to you once I put it on the board.
I
So
see.
as long as you take it out of the journal, you can move it around. But if I take it out of the journal, I have to assign that token to you. That's kind of a quirk of Roll20. It doesn't remember um, who that token belongs to, even if you pull it as a DM out of the journal for some reason. Um, and I'm not sure for you when I don't really care. There should be no real facing in D&D. And eventually, when we get tokens that are kind of headshots, it won't really matter. But the uh, for that particular one, I think if you click on it, there should be like a handle, and you can use that handle to reorient it if that bothers you, to make it look like when he's going one way, he's backing, and when he's going another way, he's going forward. But I know some players get bothered by the other players. It doesn't matter. So, all right. So as you walk in, um, you are going to see a human over here at the bar. Um, and this human is um, named. Let me go back and take a quick peek. Yeah. All right. And the welcome wench. Oh, come on. Just 15. Okay. This particular this particular fellow behind the bar is named Nira Milub. And Nira says, welcome, friend elf, to the inn of the Welcome Wench. Please um, have a seat at the bar or find a table and What brings you to our establishment today?
Well, I'll quickly walk up and approach the bar and take a seat. Flash him an equally big smile and say, well, my dear friend, I'm just in town. Well, I just recently left home, grabbed my gear, and to be honest, I'm out here looking for an adventure.
Oh, an adventure. Okay.
Yes, I presume you being a barkeep, you hear a lot of stories, a lot of tales from the folk. People are a bit more loose lipped in this establishment. So I decided to come by and ask you if you know any goings on.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, it's a it's a tremendous time here in uh, village of Dedale. We've got quite a commotion going on. There's been several caravans that are traveling between uh, between the two cities, and then locally traveling between here and the keep, that have been um, hit by bandits in the forest between here and the keep lately. Um, they're they've not only stolen goods, but they've also uh, slain some of the people, and some of the people have just disappeared and have not been heard from. So we don't really know what's happening, and it's got people both at the keep and uh, here in Dedale a little bit anxious.
Well, that sounds brilliant, my man. Exactly the sort of thing I'm looking for. Do you know if there's anyone I should talk to about these bandits?
Why, yes, a little later this evening, back in the um, private dining room, one of our uh, one of our locals, fellow named Elmo, um, is going to be coming by, and he will be meeting with a couple of the village council, and they will be discussing what to do. I think they've been talking about putting out a call for adventurers, in fact, to see if they can uh, have someone go and check out where these bandits may be coming from. They must have some place nearby that they're using as a base, and I've heard I've heard everything from a swamp sunk, or a castle sunk in the swamp, to a hideout in the mountains. So hopefully they have a little bit better idea, or maybe they just need people to go and look and find out where this hideout might be.
Well, that sounds absolutely perfect, my dear man. Thank you so much, and I'll be sure not to just ask and leave. I'll have a couple of beers while I wait for them to arrive.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Um, well, we have the stout, which was brewed over the winter and is there's still a couple of barrels of that in the cellar. We have a spring ale that is fresh from the traps, fresh on the freshly brewed within the last couple of weeks. Um, we don't yet have any of the summer ales in. Those will be a little bit farther in the season before they come in. And there is, of course, always some wine. We do have uh, wine from uh, down in the capital. Um, Seeing as how you're an elf, I'm not sure if your taste runs to wine, or if you prefer beer or ale, or what your pleasure is.
I'd usually take a bit of wine, but it seems a bit early to. be getting so drunk, especially when I have important company to meet, my good man. So I think I shall just take your stout.
Okay. All right. Well, hope you enjoy it. He goes and he pours a mug of stout, and you can tell it's kind of a rich brown, very dark beer. It has a very thick head with very tiny, tiny little bubbles on it. That's just almost like a little tan foam that sits on top of the mug. And he brings it over and he sets it down and he says, will you be having a meal, or will you be just having a drink for now?"
I think for now the drink should be just fine. If the wait proves longer than I expect, I might be getting a meal, so I'll keep you posted.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right, so we'll switch back over then to Gluengil. Um, Gluengil, you are there at your um, sister's house, and your your sister is like, "Glue, you're moping. I can't stand it when you mope. What's bothering you?"
Oh, he says, I'm just thinking about the farm.
Mm, yes. Well, thinking about it is not going to solve anything, and sometimes uh, my husband and I, we find that when we dwell on a problem too much, uh, the more we dwell on it, the more stuck we get in it. So sometimes it's good just to take your mind off of that. So if you're going to be here in Dedale for a while, what do you suppose you would be doing with yourself while you're here?
I haven't decided yet.
Ah, well, and you can tell she's uh, kind of trying to find a diplomatic way of putting this. And um, she says, "Well, we do have kind of a small house, and um, my husband and I have been wanting to be, um, well, we haven't been wanting to disturb you as our guest, but it's been a little while for us since we've enjoyed some time together. So, do you think there's some place you might be able to go for a little bit this evening so that we can have some quiet time together?"
Sure.
Ah, wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'll tell you, the Inn of the Welcome Wench, they serve a wonderful dinner. Um, they have a marvelous cook over there, and they have some pretty good ales, and uh, they also have a few selections of wine, and you can even find some entertainment. There's sometimes people that uh, will play at dice or cards, or um, they'll have a musician or someone telling stories sometimes. Uh, so that's a good place to kill an evening.
I hate to interrupt, but I think you might have, I don't know, disconnect.
Oh, yep. It kind of looks like he disconnected.
I think
Okay.
maybe his internet went out since it's on both.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's Well, that's okay. I'm gonna do this. Okay, so did your Anya. Looks like you disconnected from both card and roll 20. Okay. Now, where are you planning? Hmm. Okay, so. Hmm. Okay. All right. Well, not quite sure what's going on there, but yeah, it looks like he must have had some internet issues. All right. Um, well then, I also sent a message to um, our other player to verify if he was planning to. He asked me earlier today how long the session was going to be, and I told him, but he didn't mention anything about being late. So I hope that that is not a sign of things to come. That he's going to show up whenever he feels like it, but we
Right.
will. All right, since Elsie, since it's just you for the moment, let's take a moment and um, look at those skills.
Alrighty.
So at least make some productive use of the time.
So one thing I was thinking about that, a part of my background was I was originally a blacksmith, and I'm looking at the skills and thinking what would best fit a background like that.
Okay. Uh, there is a there is a crafting skill, and I want to just double check and be sure that that's yeah, crafting. So the character knows one type of craft. Examples include armor making, bow making, tattooing, leatherworking, smithing, weapon making, etc. Character must choose which one type of craft the skill pertains to. Of course, you can spend um, more slots and have several types of craft skills. Um, and then the character can make his living at this profession and with a successful role make expert opinions on subjects pertaining to his skill. So, oh, successful role is going to be like there's like in later editions, there's like a DC um, for certain things. If it's general knowledge, it's going to be a pretty low DC. If it's specific knowledge about a very specific item that may have been smithed, or if it's about creating a very specific type of item, and then as we get to higher levels, if you know, if your character wanted to try to create um, some of his own uh, either tools or weapons or armor or anything like that, uh, then you would want to be able to go ahead and um, make a roll, and that would be a little bit tougher. Um, but if you stack, if you stack things into a skill, then um, then the way it works is this. So each skill is based on one of the character's ability scores. Whenever DM feels a character selected skill is appropriate, ask the player to roll a d20 against the corresponding ability score. And it's called a skill roll or a skill check. If the roll is equal to or less than the ability score, the skill use succeeds. So a skill roll of 20 always fails no matter how high the chance of success. So basically what you would do is if you were to take that one is a that crafting is considered to be an intelligence. So if we look at the journal, um, and if we look at Cyran, so Cyran has an intelligence of 14. So if you put one rank into smithing, then you have a 14. If you add any more ranks, you can bump that up by one every time you add a rank. So 15, 16, 17, so on and so on. Then every time you want to use that skill, you roll a d20, and if it's your total score in that skill or below, you succeed. And if it's above that number, you fail. So you're going to keep pushing that number higher and higher, and then that just means you have more and more of a chance of success. Um, and the way they're laid out here, um, I think the maximum you can get is a uh, 19 in any specific skill, because a 20 is always going to be a failure. It's like it's like rolling a 1 on an attack is always going to be a failure. Rolling a 20 on a skill check is always going to be a failure. Um, Again, this is kind of one of those differences where uh, first edition does things that feel like they're backward um, compared to other editions of the game, or later editions of the game. So that could definitely be one if you wanted to um, have your elf be a smith as one of his skills.
That makes sense. I'll probably do that for. Was it two of them you said we were doing?
Yeah, you get to choose two at first level, and then I think every other level, so level 3, 5, 7, 9, so on and so forth, you can choose to add another one. And as I said, you can choose any of them. It's not going to be that because you've chosen a specific class, you're forbidden from taking a skill, or that you have a penalty in a skill. It's just tied to your ability score that's related to that skill is how good you are.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah. One of the interesting ones, um, and kind of a real handy one in, um, and one of the reasons I jumped at adding this as soon as I found this in the supplemental rules, is the healing skill. Um, so the healing skill uh, is the ability to treat wounds and diagnose illnesses among humans and demi-humans. A successful skill check allows you to restore um, 1d3 hit points to a wounded character. Um, and the skill cannot be used on a wounded character more than once from the same set of wounds. So, like your buddy gets hit in a battle, you can try healing once on the wounds from that battle. If you're successful, you restore a few hit points. Um, then, if you're, um, but you cannot try again unless he gets injured by a different source. Then you can try again. Um, and then there is a um, a presage or kind of a preface or foreshadowing is the word I'm looking for. Foreshadowing of critical successes and failures. If you are trying to do a heal and you get a natural one, then you um, can heal uh, 2d3 points of damage. So you roll 1d3 twice, and you uh, can heal more. And if you get a natural 20, then you actually inflict 1d3 points of damage to the patient. So it's it's one of those times where, um, like especially at first level before the clerics get any spells, it's like you can have the um, PCs and the NPCs with the healing skill try to help, but if they screw it up, you could wind up killing somebody accidentally. Oops, that wasn't the right pressure point.
All right, yeah, that does sound very useful.
Okay, so let me go back and see what we have. Not. Okay, so did your oh okay. Well, did all right. Let's see. Let's see what we can. Let's see what we can do in the way of having some. There's always some NPC henchmen that are around. Let's go ahead and continue. Did you think of any second skill that you wanted to uh, look into?
Just thinking about it, I'm not entirely sure what I want to do for that.
Okay.
It's a mix of I want to do something that makes sense for my character, but I also want to pick something that might be useful.
Okay. Well, as you're sitting at the bar, um, eventually you see a few people stroll in, and they don't all come in together, but um, as they each come in, or as the first gentleman comes in, Mira looks up from the bar and he says, "Ah, hello, Elmo. How are you?" And the fellow says, "Oh, I'm doing well, Mira. Do you have the private room set aside?" "Oh, yes, it's set aside right over in the back." "Ah, very well. The gentleman here at the bar um, may have some interest in being of some aid." So, "Oh, really? Okay, well, he wanders over and he says, "Hello, friend elf. My name's Elmo. How are you?"
I'll quickly hop off of my seat and extend a hand towards him and say, "Pleasure to meet you. My name is Cyran Selenwis.
"Oh, Cyran, Cyran. It's good to meet you."
Good to meet you as well. I was just talking to our, well, I don't know if he's our mutual friend here, but he, I was asking him if there's anything going on around town. He told me that you lovely folk have been having some problem with bandits, and I just wanted to let it be known that I'm an able-bodied man with a good sword and fine plate, and be willing to assist you find people if you're looking for anyone.
"Oh, yes, we are. We're looking for adventurers. With the problems these days, a lot of folk prefer to stay at home and hide beneath the covers. But, if we all stay home and hide beneath the covers, then every time we go outdoors, we'll find a goblin on our doorstep. So we need more people to get out in the wilds and try to beat back the bandits and beat back the goblins and beat back the orcs and the other nasty things that are out there. Yes, I'll be meeting with few of the um, village council. We'll be taking our dinner in the private dining room. There should be room if you wish to join us."
I'd be honored to meet among such fine folk.
"Ah, very well. Okay. Well, come with me." And he makes his way to the back,
And I'll
and
follow him.
he goes through this door, and he goes over, and he has a seat in the corner over here. Um, this room here is a nice, cozy private dining room. It's got wood paneled walls. There's a large hearth, which right now there's not a fire in it because the um, days are warm enough that um, you don't need a fire. And the fact you notice down in the bottom of the chimney, the or in the hearth, I should say, the uh, grate that they have for the fire is small compared to the size of the hearth. So it looks like as the seasons change, they actually plan on having either larger or smaller uh, fires in the fireplace here, depending on how warm it is outside. The, there are some dry logs and some kindling that are sitting on there. So um, clearly it's ready at a moment's notice if anybody needs to set a fire. But for right now, um, there is not a fire, and it's kind of cozy in here. There's wood paneling. There's a, you know, the obligatory uh, taxidermed uh, deer head up on the wall. Uh, looks like about a 9-point buck that somebody shot somewhere in the woods around the city or around the village. And so, as you are there, it's not long before a young woman that you had not seen before. Um, she comes in and she is dressed quite obviously as a serving maid, and she says, "Oh, hello, gentlemen. My name is Gertie. I'll be bringing your dinner tonight and your beer. Mr. Elmo, will you be having a mug of your regular?" And he says, "Oh, yes, Gertie dear. Thank you, thank you." And so um, he says, and then she turns to you and she says, Sir, when you're ready, I can bring you another mug, but I want to tell you about the menu tonight. We've got some venison and we've got some chickens. The chickens were raised here on farms in the village, uh, nice and fat and juicy. And the venison is from deer that were uh, bagged outside of the city. Um, so they're a little bit gamey, but they're both being prepared with some fresh vegetables from the gardens of town. And then we have a nice peach cobbler for dessert. Um, would you be preferring to have the venison tonight or the chicken?
I do believe the venison will do quite nicely. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful. And Mr. Elmo, are you going to have the chicken like usual, or do you want to try the venison tonight? He says, mm, I think I'll try the venison. Yeah, very well, very well. All right. And off she goes, and she's out of the room. It's not too long before a human walks in the company of a dwarf. And the human, uh, he is dressed in what you would recognize as um, typical clerical vestments. And Elmo greets him and says, "Oh, Tuck, how are you, my friend?" And Tuck says, "Oh, doing fine, Elmo, doing fine, Elmo. Oh, we have a visitor." And Elmo says, "Yes, this is Cyran. He is a visitor in town. He is asking about some work, what we might do with some of the uh, about some of the problems that we're having with the bandits and the caravans." "Oh, that's capital, capital." Um, and Tuck steps over and he says, "Very nice to meet you. Very nice to meet you." And he gives you a nice, firm, hearty handshake. And then the dwarf is there, and Elmo says, "Mac, how are you?" And the dwarf says, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine, Elmo. How are you doing?" Elmo says, "Oh, I'm wonderful, wonderful." Um, so we have a visitor here about to help us with our bandit problem. That's capital, capital. And he is very solid. Um, Having been a smith yourself, you can see kind of the rippling muscles in his upper arms and across his chest that looks like if this guy is not a smith, he has the build certainly for it. Um, and he has hands that are large for a dwarf, a little bit large for um, his frame, and kind of very nimble fingers. And when he extends his hand, he gives you a very firm handshake. He doesn't squeeze hard, but you could tell that it could probably hurt if he really squeezed your hand hard. And he says, "Name's McKeith, but everybody calls me Mac. Um, welcome, welcome to our village. What is your name, friend elf?"
A pleasure to meet you. My name is Cyran Silenwes.
Cyran, Cyran. Ah, well, I hope you don't. I hope you don't hold to some of the prejudices of your elven kind towards us dwarves. I know that many of our folk hold elves in low esteem because we think their noses are too high, but I've always found the elves to be good folk. And some elves, they take to us just fine, and some they really do like looking down their noses at us. We can't help it if we are the right size and everyone else was made too tall. and so then he pulls up a chair and he has a seat. And then after a bit, another human walks in, and Elmo says, "Ah, Zert, how are you, friend?" And Zert says, "Oh, Elmo, doing well, doing well." He's very big and tall man, and he seems rustic in a way. Um, this guy looks like he spends a lot of time out in the wilderness. You can picture him tracking creatures or uh, humanoids uh, through the woods and across the vales. It looks like he's just on the road a lot and doesn't spend a lot of time around people. Um, but he's very soft spoken. Uh, so he says, "I see we have a guest." And Elmo says, "Yes, yes, this is Cyran. He's here about the bandit problem that we're having." And Zerd says, "Oh, very good, very good. Well, I guess we should all wait for Gertie to bring our meals, and then we will um, have a feast, and then we will talk about the business of the night." And Elmo says, "Yes, yes, yes, that's a wonderful idea." So Gertie Gertie steps away, and she comes back after a time with Elmo's ale, and she brings um, wine for the dwarf, and she brings a spring ale for Zert, and she brings a stout for Tuck, and then she confirms what their food orders are, and after another few minutes, she comes back with everybody's food. When your uh, mug is empty, she'll ask you if you want another stout or if you want a wine or something different.
I'll probably switch over to wine.
Oh, okay. And the dwarf, it seems, is quite a connoisseur of elven wine. Um, Talks about several of the different varieties that he's enjoyed, and Zert, the wilderness guy, he tends to listen more than he tends to talk, and uh, Tuck um, seems to find a lot of humor in what the dwarf says, uh, and Elmo sort of just sits there and will interact with people as they talk. Uh, During the time that you all are eating, any particular questions you have for any of these characters here?
Uh, Probably nothing in particular. Just making small talk with them.
Okay. All right. Um, so after the plates are cleared away from dinner, Gertie brings peach cobbler for everyone, and she asks if anyone wants coffee, and she brings coffee for those people that want it. And then Elmo pulls out a little pouch um, that has some very sweet smelling tobacco in it. And he pulls out a pipe and he fills up his pipe with that. And he takes the pouch and he hands it around to the others. And Zert pulls out his own pipe and Mac pulls out his pipe. Tuck doesn't have a pipe and passes the pouch to you. So if your character would have a pipe, you're welcome to fill it up. If not, you can just pass it back to Elmo.
So I'll just
Okay.
pass it to Elmo.
Okay. All right. And so the they light up and there's this nice fragrant aroma. Um, smells a little bit like applewood, and there's some other kind of spice in there that you can't quite um, figure out exactly what it is, but it's kind of a sweet smelling um, scent. And uh, they each blow a couple of smoke rings and kind of admire their handiwork. And then after a few minutes of that, uh, Elmo finally says, "Well, I suppose we should get down to business." And Max says, "Yes, yes, capital idea. Zert, what have you been able to find out? Any more about the rumors of where these bandits may be coming from?" And Zert says, "Friends, I have traveled between here and the keep for the last 2 weeks, looking for signs of where the bandits come from. And I believe I have a lead. Do you all remember that early in the days of the village, there was the old moat house that was out about an hour to the south, a little bit into the woods?" And they all nod. And oh, what am I just seeing? Oh, okay. And uh, he says, "I have seen evidence of activity leading to the moat house. I've spent long days and some evenings staked out there. But of course, we have not yet seen any." Oh, whoops. Discord has disconnected. Okay. I shall. Do 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 do. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the joy of relying on technology. As we can see, there are a few little issues with getting things going. Okay, I'm gonna put on some Roll20 jukebox music. These are some of the tracks loaded into Roll20 by default from Kevin MacLeod. Quite a prolific composer for gaming music.
All right, I think I'm back on.
All right. Okay. Technology is a beautiful thing. As
Isn't it
long
the
as it
best?
works.
Never failing.
this is this is what everybody felt like when they switched over from the reliable horse and buggy to those newfangled horseless carriages that break down all the time. Um, all right. So I realized I had probably um, gone on a little bit uh, after you disconnected from Discord. So, what is the last thing you remember hearing?
I think Zert was talking about what he's been scouting out. I think was the last thing I remember here.
Yes. Okay. So uh, he talks a little bit about the area uh, that he has found, and he actually rolls out. Um, he actually rolls out a little uh, map, and imagine, if you will, a map that is written on parchment. And he talks about the area here around Dedale, and he says that um, the keep or the moat house that that he suspects is where the bandits are coming from and where he has seen evidence of recent activity is about an hour south. So it's a couple of miles south of Dedale, and it's about um, half a mile into the woods. In this area, this road, which is now known as the Queens Road, has been rerouted a couple of times. And there was one of those older spurs where, um, whoops, I'm going to go ahead and make this white. One of those older spurs where um, the road kind of went through the woods like this, and he's saying that the moat house is about over here, is uh, where he's located it on the map. So it takes about an hour to get there. Um, he's noticed evidence of at least uh, three different directions that people are going in and out of there. Um, two of them are along the older abandoned stretches of the road here. And then the third one is like a little track that has been made to look almost like a game trail um, that um, comes out and meets the road down here at this point. And um, as the others are listening to him talk, they're kind of nodding, and Elmo indicates that uh, this area, probably about right here within this area, is where they've experienced most of the recent bandit activity on the road. So it would make sense that either somewhere within or on the periphery of this region is where the bandits would be coming from. And now, Zert has not seen the bandits per se, but he's seen the evidence of their coming and going from that place. So he's not sure if they're still there or if they were operating from there and they've moved on, but he definitely thinks it's worth checking out, and that a group of adventurers or um, you know some adventurers with some men at arms might be able to go and have a look at that moat house and figure out what's going on. So, what questions or what other details might you want to know from him?
Do we happen to know how many bandits are there? How many are operating in the area?
They they say, well, we know it's a fairly sizable group in total, um, because they have hit caravans that have as many as 5 or 6 wagons and 4 or 5 guards um, on the caravan. Uh, they had There are some pretty large caravans that go from Hofsland to the capital and back, and they pass through. Those do not get hit. Those are more like in the neighborhood of 10 to 12 wagons or more. And there's usually like a detachment of the um, either the militia from Hofsland or the militia from the capital that travels with those wagons. And when you have the actual militia involved, um, the bandits seem to stay away from that. That's too much for them. But you get a little bit smaller than that, and you have um, maybe one uh, guard per wagon. There's apparently enough of them to hit that. So they could guess that a raiding party might be as many as 8 or 10 bandits that would um, hit a caravan, but probably not more than that. And then the total number of bandits, who knows? I mean, do all of them go out on the raids, or do smaller groups of them go out? It's hard to tell.
I guess I'd then ask how long this has been going on and how many convoys have they hit?
Okay. The um, the it's really about 2 months ago that the bandits began attacking caravans between the village and the keep. Um, this appears to be part of a pattern, and Elmo says, "Well, we think it may be actually more than just these bandits because we have a sneaking suspicion they're connected to another problem that the village has faced for some time. Um, the problem is a person who used to be a neighbor of ours here in the village, a magic user who goes by the name of Bargle. Um, there, there was a time when Bargle lived here. There was an accident with his family. Um, in the wake of that accident, uh, there were some strange events that happened in the town, and eventually there was a monster that went rampaging through the town and um, actually killed several people. Um, and Bargle was able to uh, destroy the monster. But we later found out that Bargle had actually uh, conjured or summoned the monster as part of his research, and he lost control of it. Um, Now, he offered to pay the families that had lost people and tried to assure everyone that he knew what mistakes he had made and that he could avoid those happening again. But the council took the decision that a man like that was too dangerous to remain in a town, so they forced him to leave. That was over a decade ago that he left the town. Then, in the last 5 years, um, we've noticed that uh, in the regions of the wilderness beyond the town, the um, monstrous humanoids have seemed a little more organized than usual. Um, and in fact, the first thing that Zert noticed was that there there were groups of mixed monstrous humanoids that normally don't associate with each other. He would see goblins alongside of orcs, um, and gnolls alongside of ogres, and normally that doesn't happen. Um, Now they have not attacked the village, but people who stray too far have been attacked, and we did manage to capture about 3 years ago. We managed to capture an orc and a goblin together. Um, they were both wearing similar types of clothing. And when we questioned them with someone who was able to speak their tongue, they told us that they followed someone they called Bargle. And the disturbing thing in the reports of these bandits in the last couple of months is that the bandits appear to be wearing clothing and colors, and you might want to say even a type of uniform that's similar to these monstrous humanoids. So it could be that somehow Bargle is connected with them too. Um, if he is, that may mean that our former neighbor is becoming a little bit more of a problem. So for right now, we want to figure out and try to stop the bandits, but there may be more to it once we once we dig into this a bit.
All right then. I guess other than interrogating them, no one has ever seen Bargle, and there haven't been any efforts to go and try to find him again. I'm guessing.
No, um, there was, and that's something. And this at this point, Mac speaks up. He says, "No, and that's something that those of us who were on the council back then rue as a mistake on our parts. We were terrified at the time that someone who could summon a monster such as Bargle had might be able to bring down more trouble on the town than we could fight off. So we took the decision to simply ask him to leave instead of trying to hold him accountable for his crimes. We allowed him to pay the families what was considered to be a fair sum, 100 gold for each family member that had been slain. And then he took his gear, left his home, and left the village. And we thought when we saw the back of him that the quicker we could put him out of our minds, the better. And no one has tried to find him because while these monstrous humanoids had seemed more organized, they were not attacking the town, and some very optimistic folk had decided that perhaps Bargle was maybe trying to establish some sense of order with them so that they wouldn't simply be ravaging around the countryside. But when people have strayed into the areas that they have been found, those people usually turn up dead. Um, Oftentimes with the wounds from weapons of these non-human or these monstrous humanoids.
Cyran snorts a little and says, teaching an orc to be civilized, you'd sooner teach a pig how to fly.
well, well said, Frindelf. That's probably the case. Uh, and it is probably a bit foolish for people to have thought that. But now that it seems like perhaps these bandits might also have something to do with Bargle, there are some that fear that we may have allowed this mage to, this magic user, to go unchecked for too long. I think what we really need to find out is we really need to find out if indeed the bandits are in league. And then perhaps if we have evidence of that, we can make a case either to Hofsland or to the capital and see if we can get the militia involved and have them help us hunt down and eliminate this Bargle once and for all. It might be beyond what we can do ourselves, unless we can convince several hearty adventurers to help us deal with the problem.
Well, you've got me for certain.
Well, good, good, good. There's several other people that have been in town recently, and some of them have thought that they might want to go bandit hunting. Um, Perhaps in the morning you can meet with some of them who are staying at the inn. And Elmo says, "Well, I certainly don't intend to sit around while my town is being attacked. I will head out along with any adventurers to go and look for these miscreants." And Zert uh, nods his head and says, "I am out in the woods enough myself, often out alone, but I would be happy to lead adventurers and yourself, Elmo, and any others that might want to come to go and see if we can deal with these bandits, see if this moat house yields any clues or allows us to capture any of the bandits and put them to the question." And both both Mac and Tuck seem like they're um, not terribly interested in heading out. Um, Tuck, uh, seems like he's got very soft hands. Uh, he's not used to being out there, and you noticed a little bit of a limp on Mac when he walked in. So maybe he is not quite as nimble as he once was. Uh, so he may not be getting out there, but it does sound like there are some other folk at the inn who might be interested in um, going and doing that. And Well, I'll have to say, Elsie, I am slightly disappointed today because I feel a little bad about actually heading out and starting to do anything and having to try to run a bunch of NPCs and trying to run a bunch of enemies with just one player. So unless you want to spend some time questioning some of the other people that are staying at the inn and finding out if they might um, be willing to take on some work for hire, then we may want to go ahead and call it for today and um, figure out who's going to be around next week and go ahead and have another session then.
Yeah, I think that's more than fair. We can table it for now.
Okay. All right. Um, so you have a little bit of the story of what's going on here. Um, Perhaps there's involvement with a old town resident. There's some monstrous humanoids out in the wilderness, and there's some bandits attacking caravans on the road. All right. So, did you have any thoughts, or and there's no pressure, you can think about it during the week, but did you have any thoughts on what other skills you might want to use at this point? Take it first level.
I was thinking, I was considering between like maybe picking up alchemy. That might be fun. Or military tactics, just because my character's trying to be a kind of hero, and that sounds more combat orientated. But I'm not entirely sure.
Okay. Alchemy. Uh, that provides the ability to recognize and identify common alchemical substances, potions, and poisons. So success with this skill will also allow a character to create an antidote potion for one specific type of poison. Um, so um, I think what we'll do is we'll say that um, a common a common poison that people run into is uh, the naturally occurring. I'll let you decide. Would you rather it be a plant based poison or an animal based poison?
I say plant.
Okay. Um, One of the common poisons that people run into is the poison of the nightshade uh, shrub. Uh, that that shrub tends to look like um, some other shrubs that uh, have some edible leaves or leaves that are used um, for medicinal purposes. And so people will sometimes go out and misidentify and have some nightshade, and that tends to put them into a sleep which they have a hard time waking up from. And if they aren't awakened and if there's no antidote administered, they will eventually die basically from starvation because they just sleep themselves to death. Um, so we'll say that if you take the alchemy, you automatically get um, the antidote for nightshade poison. Um, and then every time you reach a level where you can add another skill, you can also select another uh, type of poison that you can create an antidote for. And we'll just say that's because during the course of your adventures, you've run into um, several different types of poisons and you've studied them a little bit, and then you gradually can build up the array of antidotes that you can make. And we'll say that's the way in this game that the alchemy skill works, if you should choose to take it. So
All
that's
right.
one of the options you talked about. And then we'll take a look at the military tactics. Um, this skill allows a character to interpret the movement of enemy forces and to move his own forces better. When using this skill, the player um, can examine the situation and decide what he thinks is right, what he thinks the enemy is doing, or how he should set up his units. Um, so the DM is supposed to roll for this skill, and if it's a successful roll, um, the DM will uh, tell the player whether he has calculated correctly. Um, and if and basically what that means is that means if it's a successful roll and you've misinterpreted it, then the DM will tell you, well, that's not really what they're doing. Your military tactics would tell you they're actually planning to do X, Y, and Z. If you fail the roll, then you believe what, you believe how you've interpreted it. And then whether that happens to be true or not, you would go with that, you would go with that insight. Um, so most of the time I'm probably going to tell you that, yep, that's exactly, they're doing exactly what you think. And then you would have to find out either, oh, no, that's not what they were doing because I failed my roll. Or you would find out, oh, yeah, that's what they're doing. And you still don't know whether you actually succeeded or failed your roll. So that's kind of the way the skill is designed to be used. So um, this appears to be a holdover. This skill appears to be a holdover from the days of the um, miniatures games like Chainmail that preceded D&D. Because um, I was reading a book earlier this year on kind of the life of Gary Gygax and what led up to the creation of D&D. And he and a bunch of the other people that were part of um, part of the early TSR days, they were kind of all into these reenactments of historical battles using miniatures. So, they were studying things like the War of 1812 and the Civil War and Revolutionary War and some of the European wars, um, and then even some of the ancient wars um, that, the Romans and the Greeks and whatnot. And they would create their little miniature armies and try to play out the battles um, using the dice and the rules that they had. And then they eventually tried to create the D&D game out of it. And some of those things that they tried to force into the game that really later on didn't make a whole lot of sense. So this particular one, military tactics, I'm not sure um, how useful that's going to be, because at least at this point in your career, you're probably not going to be commanding a whole lot of forces. Now, as PCs do get to higher and higher levels in this edition, they can start to build strongholds and start to attract followers. And then at that point in time, they might indeed be in charge of larger armies. So military tactics might be something to take down the road as you get a little closer to that point.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I'll probably save it for later then.
Yeah. So, well, we'll just let you go for now with the um, smithing, and then during the week, if you either decide you really want to settle on the alchemy, or if you decide there's something else you would like to have, uh, or that you would like to learn about, let me know. And in the meantime, I'll use some time during the week to put together some uh, more descriptions um, of these different skills, and then uh, add that to the PDF that I put up on the Discord um, earlier today.
All right, that sounds good.
All right. Well, LC, it's a bit of a short session, but I guess that's what happens when we don't have too many people show up.
That's all right.
Yeah. So I know that Roy and our other player were really looking forward to playing. So um, we'll find out what happened today with our other guys and see how that see how everything works out.
All right then.
Okay. Well, thanks for showing up, and I'll be in touch later in the week. We will play, or I will run a session next Saturday at noon. Um, there's a makeup game for the local soccer team. If you remember last month, the that hurricane that everybody thought was going to hit Florida, and instead it just chewed up the Bahamas for a few days. Um, the local soccer team decided to um, postpone a game they were supposed to play that weekend, and they've rescheduled it for next Saturday. I think at 5 o'clock, and so we'll try to have a session next week, but it'll probably be by design a little bit of a shorter session. Um, and then after that, we should just be to our normal. Um, I like to run sessions around 3 hours or 4 hours. Uh, it's enough time to get some stuff done, but it's not so long that everybody's sitting around feeling like their butts are glued to the chair. Uh, so that always feels like a nice, comfortable uh, time for me in a D&D session. So we'll gauge next week based on who commits to coming, and I mean, if there seems like there's not a whole lot of people committed to coming, well, then maybe we'll just skip next week and pick up again the week thereafter and give more people time to figure out what they want to do.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. Well, thank you, Elsie. Take care, and we will talk to you later.
All right, see you next week.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.